Even with her nerves, she takes in the surroundings, a mix of art and culture. It's a different world, but for a moment, she forgets about the uncertainty she feels inside. A part of her is excited about the possibilities, but she's also unsure. There's so much more to this journey than she ever expected. The woman sits, explaining how she hasn't been able to keep up with her emails since someone left her without help. She gestures to a stone bench, and the other person sits down while she remains standing. A question is asked about yoga, and the woman mentions she has done more than just yoga. She's worked various jobs, including internships and tutoring. As they talk, a teenage girl appears in the doorway, wearing a traditional long skirt and a t-shirt with Gucci on it. The woman introduces the girl, and the girl speaks in fluent English, asking if the yogurt is still needed or if it should be put away. The response dismisses the yogurt matter, and the woman mentions the new yoga workshop starting soon, impressed by the website. The girl is told she no longer needs to teach yoga, and it becomes clear that the girl had been meant to be the new yoga instructor. The woman realizes the awkwardness and apologizes, feeling it was a mistake to assume. The girl, disappointed, is reassured that there's still work to do in the kitchen, like preparing meals for a group, and a mention is made of someone who's been unwell recently. The woman tries to explain that she has only ever taught yoga to children, not adults, and feels bad about not taking the teaching role. She wonders if the girl would have been better off working in the kitchen. Despite the woman's thoughts, the decision stands as the girl is asked to get a coffee instead. The woman reflects on how she seemed like the perfect candidate for the role, having skills ranging from admin work to yoga, but she's still unable to take the job. Frustrated, she thinks about how she almost had her dream job but somehow messed it up. Her mind wonders if she could have done things differently. She reaches into her backpack and pulls out a memoir that had meant a lot to her over the years. The woman asks for it to be signed before she leaves, and the other person takes the book, flipping through it, noticing all the notes and underlines the woman had made over the years. The woman feels vulnerable, wondering if she should explain how much the book had helped her during tough times, even marking passages that held personal meaning. She had been reading this book since high school, and it had helped her make sense of her emotions, but now, seeing her notes in front of her, it feels like a deeply personal connection. The interaction with the author in this moment makes her realize the distance between them. Even though she has looked up to this person for so long, the woman speaks about how many of the people she teaches think they're not supposed to write in their books. The other person, a bit lost for words, gives a forced smile, unsure how to respond. The woman grabs a pen and signs the title page of the book before handing it back. A comment is made about the other person being a writer, and while it's a wish, the person admits they aren't quite there yet. There's a brief mention that when the job was first asked for, the writing dream wasn't shared. It hadn't occurred to the other person that their aspirations would be something the woman would care about. The idea of being a writer makes the other person feel uneasy, as they haven't earned that title yet. The woman shares an interesting thought about how sometimes what's hidden inside is more important than what's openly shared. The other person wants to believe this, wishing that there are strengths waiting to be uncovered, but feels like an imposter. They wonder if everyone feels this way at some point. The woman gestures to some stacks of paper, likely manuscripts from other people, and comments on how writers often hide the real story in their work. They hold on to it until the writer can wrestle it out of them. The other person agrees, recalling creative writing workshops they've attended, though it's clear that the woman isn't impressed by formal writing instruction. The other person mentions how life and travel have taught them more than the workshops did, even if that wasn't entirely true. But they're here now, and they're willing to give it a try. There's a brief pause as the woman seems to be thinking. Hummingbirds fly past, a beautiful sight that makes it hard for the other person to stay focused. The woman asks for the other person's name, and they explain that it's actually a different name on their passport, but they've always gone by a shortened version. The woman seems to consider this, and the other person is caught between admiring the beautiful surroundings and feeling a sense of awe. This place feels magical, but it's clear that it's a magic that's been earned. The woman deserves this life, and the other person wants to become the kind of person who deserves it too. The woman then suggests starting fresh. She explains that she needs more than just administrative help. She needs someone to handle hospitality once the people arrive, and help with social media too. The other person admits that they could learn. The woman encourages them to start right away and asks them to make a short video about what they liked about one of her books, focusing on the cover or the scenery, something casual for the social media feed. The other person agrees, feeling that maybe this birthday week will be more special than expected. A flower falls into their lap as they prepare to take on the task. The woman stands by the window of a small shop, trying to appear interested in the items around her. But in reality, she is just waiting for her eyes to dry and her sinuses to clear. She looks at the flyers stuck on the window, noticing events like a meditation workshop and a concert. But what catches her attention is the thought that the entire village was once filled with flyers of her child, though she sees none now. The photo they chose for the flyer shows her child in simple clothing, with her hair in braids, holding a small dog at a shelter in Panama. It's a photo that represents the child's good nature and volunteer work. As a parent of a missing child, she realizes how hard it is to pick the right photo, a photo that makes her look like a responsible, good person, avoiding any party images or risky behaviors. The questions from the police, the consul, and the investigator all seem to be the same. They ask silly questions, not caring to know about the child's life or the regular disagreements that any family has. She remembers a conversation where her child mentioned wanting to move into her own apartment after the trip. It didn't make sense since she had 2 homes to choose from, and she didn't have financial reasons to do so. She had talked about becoming a writer, which made no sense to the parent either. As a parent, she constantly questions whether she is overreacting or underreacting to things. Her child was born prematurely, and those early months were difficult. She treated her as fragile, but as time passed, her child grew more active, doing sports and living life despite health warnings. When she went to college, she chose to stay nearby, not far from home. However, the distance was still enough for her to want to cut back on contact with her parents, a desire to feel independent. The first semester went well, but after that, her child went silent. The parent assumed her child was in touch with the other parent, but it turned out that wasn't the case. They almost missed the signs of distress when their child dropped out of contact and stopped attending classes. It was a friend of the other parent who noticed something was wrong. She regrets not acting sooner when she felt something was off on her child's birthday, a day that had always been special. When the birthday came and went without contact, she tried to reach out several times, but received no response. Eventually, when she was feeling anxious and sad, the texts finally came, and she laughed with embarrassment and cried with relief. The scene ends with the morning sun rising and the sounds of birds, but a cockroach surprises her as she wakes up. The story shifts focus to a mother who is trying to understand what happened to her daughter, who disappeared suddenly without any explanation. The last few messages from the daughter are emotional, with one on her birthday, and a few others expressing apologies. The daughter had been out of touch for 5 days, which caused concern. After waiting, the mother and a close friend decided that 5 days was too long to be without contact. They launched a search, but it ended after 6 weeks, though the authorities kept the case open. The mother feels frustrated because the search was stopped too soon, and she wonders if they gave up too quickly. Now, far from home, she retraces her steps in a foreign country, stopping at a pizzeria for a small meal. She pulls out a notebook, which she has been using to keep track of everything related to the disappearance. The notebook is divided into sections, one with background on the location, one for police findings, one with messages from her daughter, and another on an influential person in her daughter's life. As she reviews the notebook, the mother reads about the violence and dangers in the area, and the police findings, which include some details about a local drug dealer and a young man who had been with her daughter before she went missing. Though the authorities didn't link these people directly to the disappearance, the mother is still searching for any possible connections. The most important section for the mother is the one filled with her daughter's own words, texts, and messages that show her thoughts and feelings. Her daughter had written about an inspiring woman who lived an adventurous life. The mother reflects on how much her daughter admired this woman, who had lived a life that seemed so different from her own. The mother continues reading about the life of this woman, who had written a memoir about being a runaway teenager. The memoir led to success in writing and acting, but also criticism, especially about her personal life. The woman's relationship with her own daughter had been strained. Despite her cooperation in the investigation, the mother feels that this woman might be hiding something, or not being fully honest. The mother struggles with mixed emotions as she tries to understand her daughter's connection to this person, wondering if it could lead her to the truth behind her daughter's disappearance. The main character feels a new discomfort after reading public criticisms of a famous woman. She begins to see that celebrities, no matter how they behave, are always criticized, whether they engage with the public or choose to hide away. This understanding makes her realize that sometimes it's best to stay out of the spotlight, as it's nearly impossible to avoid criticism. Though she doesn't want to admit it, This advice makes sense. She checks the time, still having an hour before the party begins. Deciding to pass the time, she opens her ebook and continues reading the woman's second memoir. This one feels very different from the first. Instead of gritty stories, it's a softer, more personal account. As she reads, the words start to hit her harder than expected, particularly the part where the woman expresses a deep desire to hold a child again. The words are raw and painful, and they seem to strike a chord with the main character. The laughter of her fellow workshop participants breaks her focus, and she looks up, realizing they are already leaving for the party. She hasn't even changed or freshened up, but is left behind. Rushing to catch up, she hurries to the main plaza, where the group is climbing into tuk-tuks, colorful local vehicles, for the ride to the party. There is only one tuk-tuk left, and she decides to take it, hoping to make it